So, within the span of a few hours on July 1st, 2025, we saw some pretty big signings by these Western Canadian teams. Early on July 1st, you had yourselves the Brock Boeser re-signing, where, out of nowhere, Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin brought back Brock Boeser to the Vancouver Canucks. It was a huge move, reasonable contract dollar amount, maybe a little long, but still, the Canucks did what they had to do to keep Brock around in Van, and honestly, use the money that they signed him with in the best way that they could have. Vancouver didn't really have any extra free agent options available to them that would have been reasonable dollar-wise, and trades were not really looking all too accessible because all these other teams had money as well. So Vancouver re-signed Brock Boeser early on into the day, and then one of the last signings of July 1st happened towards the end here. It was the Edmonton Oilers and Andrew Mangiapane. I dubbed this a very good signing, amazing signing by the Edmonton Oilers, and a lot of y'all in the comment section were also really in love with this new winger acquisition for Edmonton. Honestly, when you think about it, you think about Curtis Lazar coming into Edmonton, Mangiapane coming into Edmonton, the departures of Evander Kane and Victor Arvidsson. There's a lot of value there with the Oilers, especially with the dollar amounts provided with these players. But what if I told you that both of these guys, Mangiapane and Brock Boeser, were also on the radar of another Canadian team that the players straight up just did not really see too much interest in going to? Let's head over to this article published on July 12th, 2025 by Ken Wiebe and Mike McIntyre on the Winnipeg Free Press. Here is your Jets mailbag from Saturday last week. Dog Days of Summer edition. Your June Jets questions answered. This will be linked in the description. It's a long article, there's a lot of questions, and there are a lot of answers, so there's a lot of content here to dive into if you are a fan of Peg City. But I wanted to talk about the very first question asked by Raber 4883 7441 Sr. Yeesh, talk about long usernames. But they went out there and asked this Jets mailbag duo if Mark Shipman and Kevin Cheveldayoff knew that Nikolai Ehlers wasn't coming back, why didn't they go after some UFAs on day one? By the time he dawdled about not coming back, it was too late. Was that his revenge on a team that didn't utilize him properly for years? Obviously, Raber is referring to Nikolai Ehlers, the fact that Ehlers did not sign right away on free agency in the same way that Brock Boeser or Andrew Mangiapane did. Ehlers took his time. He waited until day 2 to make the contract signing official, and all the insiders on the TV were saying, yeah, I mean, Ehlers is not signed yet, he's waiting. It's a very intentional decision for him to wait, he just doesn't want to rush into things. Marner already knew he was going to Vegas, John Tavares knew he was staying, Bennett, Marchand, Ekblad, Boeser, in a way they already knew they were staying, maybe Brock a lot later so. But this is what Ken Wiebe goes out there and replies. During the press conference, Kevin Cheveldayoff said that Ehlers informed the team he wasn't coming back on July 2nd, the day before he officially agreed to terms with the Carolina Hurricanes. That didn't prevent the Jets from taking a big swing on day 1 at bringing in right winger Brock Boeser, but he never really wanted to leave the Vancouver Canucks, so he stayed. The Jets also made an offer to middle six winger Andrew Mangiapane, but he took a bit less money for the opportunity to potentially ride shotgun with one of McDavid or Draisaitl. Mikael Granlund got a 3-year deal with an AAV of $7 million, and that was probably too steep a price for the Jets at this stage of his career, even with his versatility of being able to play center or wing. The Jets are rarely big players on July 1st, so it had nothing to do with Ehlers' delay in his decision, and revenge was not a factor. So no. The Jets took care of defenseman Hayden Fleury before free agency opened, agreed to terms with Jonathan Toews before July 1, then added 3 NHL forwards and a bunch of important depth pieces, some of whom will compete for jobs on opening night in the first 2 days of free agency. A good chunk of Cheveldayoff's work revolves around getting 3 RFAs, Samberg, Velarde, and Barron, inked to new deals and nailing down extensions for Connor and Lowry. Outside of landing a big fish like Boeser, the Jets were always going to have to replace most of Ehlers' production by committee. That's a good way to think about it, I think. A lot of Jets insiders and analysts going out there and saying, yeah, it might not have been all too projectable to say that Winnipeg was going to land one of these top guys. We all recognize that the Jets are one of those teams that kind of has difficulty attracting big-name free agents in general, so the fact that you have guys like Scheifele and Hellebuck who are willing to commit to Peg City and stick around long-term, you have to take advantage of that when that opportunity is given to you. You have superstars, you're having that conversation with them, and they say, yeah, okay, I'm going to sign, I want to be here for a while. You have to give them money. You have to commit to these guys because it's so rare that a superstar talent is willing to do that in Winnipeg. We just saw Nikolai Ehlers leave for nothing. With this in mind, though, I did think it was interesting that the Jets were going after Brock Boeser, but the conclusion here is that Brock never wanted to leave Vancouver, so he stayed. Might I remind you, we made a video about this a few days ago as well, but reports were coming out that had Brock Boeser become a full-fledged, no restrictions at all free agent who could just sign anywhere he wanted to, the New York Islanders were apparently a destination that he was interested in going over to potentially play on a triple B line with Bo Horvat and Matthew Barzal. That idea is just total lunacy and something that Canucks fans would have been absolutely pissed off about. Like, of course, Brock Boeser ends up leaving Vancouver because the Canucks don't give him the term that he wants, so he turns his back on the Canucks and yeets all the way to Bo Horvat's team. Like, that would have pissed off Canucks fans like crazy. But the fact is, we did hear that he was interested in the Isles. We didn't really hear much as to whether or not he would have been interested in Winnipeg. So it kind of makes sense to me here that the Jets beat reporters are saying, yeah, I mean, the Jets tried, they wanted this guy, but they didn't really have a chance to get him. But I also thought it was really interesting how Andrew Mangiapane was offered a deal with Winnipeg, but he took less money to head over to Edmonton. He said, sorry, Winnipeg, you guys are a good team, arguably one of the best teams in the NHL. But I'm going to take a $3.6 million AAV deal to play with Edmonton and take my potential 40 to 50 point upside alongside a Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Not to say that Mangiapane was bad in Washington. He had 28 points in 81 games. That's fine. It's just, the fact is, Washington had so many producers this previous season, from Strome to Ovi, Protas, Dubois, Wilson, McMichael, and then all the defensemen there. You had a full top 6 worth of production in your forward core before you get to the top 3D in points, and then you get to Mangiapane. So this guy just wasn't really utilized in Washington to the same extent that he was in Calgary a few years ago, where he was consistently potting 40-ish point caliber seasons. So the fact that he decided to take less money to head over to Edmonton, even though there would have been a nice top forward spot in Winnipeg available because of the lack of Nikolai Ehlers, that says volumes about Mangiapane's decision-making, and I think a lot of Oilers fans should be kind of praising the guy for that. You know, he took less money to play with McDavid and Draisaitl. Good replacements, dollar-wise, for Arvidsson, for Evander Kane, for Connor Brown, who also is gone. But going back to the main topic of this video, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this assessment here from the Winnipeg Jets beat? That Brock Boeser straight up was more intent on coming back to Vancouver than he was going over to Winnipeg. And what are your thoughts on Andrew Mangiapane rejecting the Jets too in order to take a lesser dollar amount AAV to play with McDavid and Draisaitl in Edmonton? If you're a Jets fan, how do you feel about these failed signings? How do you feel about the process in which you're going to have to continue working with Samberg, Velarde, and Barron? And is the loss of Nikolai Ehlers really as painful as some Jets fans are making it out to be? Was it always going to be some sort of a replacement by committee type of situation? Or is losing out on the sweepstakes for a Marner or a Boeser really that impactful? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.